Hey there. It's been a long time since I have videoed a demo post-COVID, so bear with me as I get us through this. So today we are going to be learning a couple of different clay strategies. This is the first time I am doing clay at Kirk, so we're going to start off with just some basic the basic three strategies. We're going to do a pinch pot, we're going to learn how to do a coil, and a slab. So the first thing I had done was I had already cut out my small pieces for my students. So I'm just gonna go ahead and grab one of those and use one of those that's ready to go. So the first thing we do is we wedge our clay. Now wedging is very simply is just getting all the air bubbles out. So we take our little piece of clay and we are just kind of tapping it on the table, making sure that we are just getting any bubbles out. You can also kind of tap it almost like you're making a meatball in your hands. I already wedged this clay very well, plus it is straight from the factory, so they usually do a pretty good job before they even send it to us. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make our coil pot. So I am going to make sure that this is wedged and then into a nice ball. You can either roll it on the table to make it a nice ball or use your hands. This is great fine motor practice. You can do one way with your hands, you can flop it over and do the other way. This is excellent for just practicing that fine motor skill, even if you don't end up making anything. You want to give your student a piece of clay to play with. It's a lot of fun. So the idea is that you are making as close to a sphere, a circle, a ball as possible. Now here's the fun part. We're going to take our thumb and we're going to put it right in the center of our pinch pot. So the idea is that a pinch pot is made by pinching the sides with your finger on the inside and then pinching this side. So I'm using my thumb in the middle to create a hole, and then I am going to pinch the sides to open up the hole of my pot. So you'll see as I am pinching, it's getting wider and wider. And I'm just gonna keep going around and around and around. I'm using both my hands. This hand is holding for support, and I am pinching on the inside, like so. I'm left-handed, so you can use either hand. I usually use my left hand. You can use either hand though. So you're pinching until you make an opening. Now, this can be as large or as small as you want. For these pinch pots, we want to pinch the bottom. We don't want it to be too thick. So I will come around and I will check to make sure my students, so we don't want it to be any thicker than like 1/4 of an inch. So I'm just going to keep going around and around. Now it might end up getting really wide and or tall and thin. It depends on you and how you're going to make your pot. Okay, so I stepped over and I got a little bit of water in a container so that I can smooth out. Any kind of container will do to hold water. It really doesn't matter. I like the more shallow ones because I can put my fingers in there or put tools in there. So these work out great. We're going to smooth out with just a little bit of water, because if you notice, there sometimes can get some little cracks and crevices on our pot. So we're just going to dip our fingers and just smooth out with our fingers any area We don't want it to be too slappy. So just a little bit on our fingers to smooth that out and kind of smooth away any cracks or parts of it that need to be smooth, any fingerprints. Now you can use tools for this. I like to start firsthand. I like to start with my hands and just smoothing out with my fingers. And then later on, if I need to use a tool to even it out, I can do that. If you'll notice, it's very pliable. It will move. It will be a little bit wiggly. So just reshape it to the size, the opening that you want it to be. Now, I'm not really pressing too much when I'm doing this. I'm just smoothing it out. So as I'm very gently with the wetness on my finger, I'm just very gently pressing, not too hard, because I don't want it to fall open in a soggy pot. I'm just smoothing it out. So it's a very gentle process. I usually spin with my hand, or you can even get one of those turntable things and spin. I think I have a couple of those around here somewhere, but for this, I'm just doing this quick little demo. So we're just gonna smooth. And there we go, we've got our little pinch pot. Now, I could continue smoothing this for hours and really adding some detail, but for this short video, I just wanted to demo that very briefly. The next step will be to take a tool and flip it over and carve your initials on there. You can use your fingernail or a tool and just make sure your initials on there. And then this will go in a box on the shelf until it is dry and ready to glaze, which will be the next step that I show you. The next one I want to show you is how to do coils. So I have already rolled out a slab, which I will demonstrate. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a little piece of this to make a coil pot. Let me grab my tool here. All right, so what we're going to do is we're just going to slice off a couple of rows of clay. I'll just do a few to start us off. And then what we're going to do with this is we are going to roll it into a coil. So after we wedge our clay and roll it out, then we can take this and create a coil. This is one way you can do it. You can also grab a piece of clay off of your wedged piece. So like say you just wanted to grab a little piece of clay off of a wedged piece, and you can start rolling that out that way as well. So two different methods. Always make sure you give yourself enough room. I always end up starting off doing these demos with stuff in one spot, and then I realize I need to move things around. So you can make your coil as long as you want, as skinny as you want it to be. But just remember that when it comes time, you want it to be as solid as possible without any cracks in it. Okay, so there's a couple of methods on how to make a coil pot. The first one, you can start with doing individual coils and building upon that. The other method is the spiral method. Now, what I like to do with the spiral method is I basically take the one corner, the one end of the spiral of the coil, and we kind of build up and around to create our pot. So we kind of build up that way. But the one thing that you have to remember when you do it this way is that anytime you are attaching two pieces of clay together, you have to do what's called slipping and scoring. Now, the scoring is just making little tiny marks on your pottery so that it creates a little bit of a rough edge. Think of it like if you had two smooth things next to each other, you were trying to glue two smooth things on to each other, they would be slippery and they would not stick. But if it has a little bit of a bite and you're trying to attach them, they kind of grab onto each other. So think of it that way. So when you're slipping and scoring, basically what you're doing is you're adding your score marks to both sides. And then you add a little bit of water to it, and they will attach to one another. You can see very closely how the water kind of adheres and it kind of becomes glued to each other. So to do that coil method, that's all you're gonna do. You're just gonna slip and score this whole piece, add a little bit of water, and then just keep piling it on top of one another. This would be if you are creating a very skinny thing. Sorry, my hands keep getting in the way. I'm horrible at videoing myself, I'm not gonna lie. So I'm scoring, I'm taking my finger, I'm dabbing a little bit on there, and then I'm putting my coil on top. This is a very teeny tiny example. You of course can make it as big as you want, but I just, for our purposes here, I wanted to just show you what it's like. So you basically slip and score and build it up, and then you can leave it coiled like that so that you've got some nice fun marks, almost looks like a little log cabin, or you can smooth it out. So you would just take your fingers then and smooth it out when you're all finished, and you'll have a nice smooth little pot. Like I said, this is a very, very miniature version, very itty bitty tiny, tiny pot. So you would just smooth that out. And we've got a cute little pot that way. The other way would be to pile the rings. So what you would do is score the ends, right? And you'd attach them like rings, and you would just keep piling it up. So then say you were rolling out this way, roll out your coil. until it's the size that you want, and then you can trim it off. Oops. Notice my hands are expanding as this gets wider. You know, I'm not staying here in the middle. I am expanding my hands so that wherever I am, how long it goes, my hands are kind of supporting it. So the idea is that you're building rings one on top of each other. Okay, so you're gonna roll out a whole bunch of coils. All right, I rolled out a bunch of coils already. So I can now show you how we're gonna put it all together. Okay, so very simply, same thing I was saying before, you're going to make sure that you are slipping and scoring. Any two pieces that are gonna stick together, you need to make sure you are scoring and slipping, slipping and scoring. So what that is doing is you are making marks. So if it is being attached here and here, you're going to score, dab a little water, and attach it like so, and you can always smooth it out later. Okay, so that's one ring. So anywhere we are attaching, so if I am putting a piece on top, I'm gonna take my tool, and you can use a needle tool, you can use this kind of tool, you can use a, I have little wire brushes or anything that's gonna rough up the surface and make little kind of crisscross, cross-hatching kind of things. So again, any two parts that are being attached, so you have to do it to both of them. That's just going to make sure that it sticks. Take my finger, dip my water on both parts. You can overlap, which means you're going up to the next level. You just want to make sure that every time you're attaching two pieces, you're slipping, scoring, and then giving it, squeezing it a little bit so that it has a chance to adhere. Okay, so doing my next one. I'm kind of picking up where I left off, so it's working its way around. Sometimes the clay will start to dry out as you're doing this process, and that's okay. You can just add a little bit of water, re-wet it, smooth it out. Remember, if it's if you're reattaching, if you're attaching it, you got to make sure you slip and score. So just give it a little extra. So I could sit here for another, 20 minutes to a half an hour and just keep building this up and building this up. But I want you to see, the basics here. So I'm going to stop with that right now. But the idea is that you would just keep building and keep building, slipping and scoring in between each layer. And then you would make a bottom for it either by doing a coil the similar way that I showed you before. Okay. But just remember, each layer you are slipping and scoring and slipping and scoring. So if I wanted to do a bottom for this, just score, 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 add my slip. Score, 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 score. Slip, 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 slip. And then you're just pressing it. Score, 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 score. So again, anytime you are attaching two pieces of clay together, you must score and slip, slip and score. Every time, even if it's a tiny little thing like an eyeball or something that you're like, oh, it's wet, it'll stick. Once it dries, it will fall off. So you have to do this. It is a little redundant, I know, a little repetitive, but once that dries, it'll fall apart if it's not slipped and scored, okay? So this is looking a little rough right now, but we can smooth this out once it's, if we want to. But for the purposes today, I'm gonna stop right there. And we'll let that set aside so that you can, we'll move on to the next thing. So the next thing is a slab, which basically a slab is rolling something out flat. So what we'll do is we will, after we wedge our clay, we will take it and we will roll it out with a rolling pin in between two pieces of, I like to use like either rulers or pieces of wood, something like that. So in this case, I rolled this out and I made a nice flat, even piece with the rolling pin so that it was the nice size that I wanted it to be. Okay, so here's my slab. Now, what I'm going to do then is I'm going to cut a rectangular shape. Nice long skinny rectangular shape from this. Take off my scraps so that I can use this to make my mug. Okay, so just like I am going to with everything else, I'm going to take my tool and I'm going to score any two pieces that are going to be attached. I'm going to score this side and I'm going to score this side. Now this has been sitting out for a few minutes since I began this video, so it is a little bit drier. It's in a state called leather hard, so it is a little bit more firm. I do recommend that you let your slabs kind of firm up a little bit before you try to do this. It just makes it in a nice state of half dry, is what we call it, leather hard. So I am attaching the two sides together. I'm making a seam basically. And once you attach those two sides, you're gonna smooth it out. You can use the tool or you can use your finger. make sure you're holding it firmly. You're not pressing too hard because you don't want it to cave in. Again, you can add any water to kind of smooth out any areas that might be cracking. Very, very gently, just kind of adding a little bit of water here, just like I did with my pinch pot, just to kind of smooth out any areas. And there you've got a nice cylinder there. Now to do our bottom, same concept. We'll roll out a slab. These rulers will make sure that it's nice and even. It won't be too thin, won't be too thick. Okay, so there's how you roll out another slab. Now for this guy, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I center him, make sure I reshape him so he's in the nice circular shape that I want. Sometimes when we're hand building, it might, move to a different shape. So kind of reposition it, get it to be the shape that you want. And then you can take your tool and you can trim. You're basically cutting around the outside of where you want your bottom to be. Okay, and then you'll remove that. It will stick a little bit sometimes, but that's not going to stay that way. Remember, anytime we are attaching things, we always have to slip and score. So even if it sticks for a few minutes, as soon as that dries, it'll fall off. So we do have to do the slipping and the scoring process. So here we go. I'm going to take my tool. I'm going to score. I'm going to score the bottom. Because remember, anytime you're attaching two pieces together, you must slip and score. So I'm going to dab a little bit on there. Now here's a little fun fact for you. The ancients didn't have a lot of water when they were doing their pottery, so they used to use their own spit. They used to use their own saliva. So interesting, I know. All right, so I'm gonna take that and just kind of press it down on the bottom, and then I can smooth that onto the bottom. Now this is very rough. I did this very quickly. If this were my own pot, I would take some time to smooth it out and really make sure that it's nice and doesn't have any finger marks on there or cracks. But since this was just a very quick demonstration for middle school, this is very rudimentary. I didn't even trim the top off with that part. I would actually trim that off so that it had a nice top part. So smoothing out. I like to go in and smooth the inside also. There's another tool that you can use that's got a little rounded piece on there that's even nicer. That'll reach in there and blend that together. So there you go. You've got your slab pot, your coil pot, and your pinch pot. Thanks for watching.